Hey everybody, Mike Reese here. Another martial arts chat here, and today is my probably the first video starting from this week. I may get another one tomorrow, but it depends. But today, I want to talk about a couple of different topics. I'm going to put links to a couple of videos below. One is an interview of Dominic Izzo on his channel, which is I think it's Combative Wing Chun, I think. Anyways, you'll see it because it'll be on there. And Paul Ingram, which I'm going to put his channel on there too, just in the link below, but just because I like both of these guys. I like them both, and I think there's some great perspective being had here. But it was an interview with Paul Ingram and Dominic Izzo, and Dominic was talking to him about knife combat and stuff like that, because Paul Ingram is a Kali guy, and he works with sticks and knives, and Dominic, he's a Wing Chun guy. He does not work with all that stuff all the time, and he works more with just his hand-to-hand stuff, and he even admittedly so does that. So when I was watching it, they had some good questions. He's had some questions from viewers of his and stuff like that, and it was really very good in my opinion, because what was happening was he was able to ask Paul some great things about knife and combat, and I think this really set a great tone. It was a great thing for anybody who has that versus thing, the combat versus competition, in my opinion. Because competition fighting is totally different. The way Paul says it was great. He even says it, and I'll let you guys watch the video, but in it he says, everything we do with our hands is to get back to our weapon, get back to the tool that we have. And I like that, because that is a very combat-minded type of training. You don't train that way for MMA. You don't train that way for karate tournaments. You don't train that way for Olympic Taekwondo. You don't train that way for Olympic Judo, or just judo tournaments or jiu-jitsu tournaments. You don't train that way for kickboxing, boxing, wrestling. You don't train that way for competition at all, because these are the tools of the trade that you have in those situations. For him, it was all going right back to the weapon. Everything goes right back to the weapon. And the guy knows his stuff. I mean, if he's going to Dog Brothers, because he says he goes to Dog Brothers too, if he goes to Dog Brothers tournaments, he knows his junk, because that is a weapon-orientated, free-for-all, no-holds-barred tournament type thing. Now, is it a competition? Not really. You're not really going to get a trophy. It's just testing you out. Who gets to be the better person. It's not for points. It's not for anything else. But can you hold? Can you hang? Can you do the things that you say that what is your training? Is your training good enough to be able to hang out? And I love that. I love that thought. I love that ability. And I love the fact that these guys have the tenacity to go in there. Because if you're really into that, you should try that out. You should really go for it. I don't think that's a marker of whether or not you can handle yourself at all in general, because that's like me telling everybody, well, you're never really gonna know if you can get in a street fight until you get a street fight. So maybe you should go pick some fights. I mean, that's neither here or there. So it's a more of a matter of, I look at it as this wonderful way of being able to test out your abilities, and that's really a great thing. So he knows his stuff. He knows what he's doing. So the way he was talking, and he was talking about that, and I think that's great for the topic of combat minded and competition minded, because even the Rangers. I think there's a guy who's a professional MMA fighter who's in the Rangers, and you don't see him arm-barring nobody. You see him using the Ranger tactics that he uses, which is everything is quick, simple, get back to your weapon. Quick to the weapon. This is not stuff, and this is some of the stuff you can be trained. Now, either side can be trained to go to the other side, to be competition trained, to, you can either be competition trained or you can be combat trained. And if you have training in one or the other, you're going to just have to switch up some mindset stuff to get the other one to go over. Does it mean this person's going to be good in competition if he's combat minded? Probably not. Does it mean this person's going to be good in combat if he's competition trained? Probably not. Does this mean that either one of these guys are going to be good in a street fight? It means they both have opportunity to be really good in certain situations in a street fight. It's going to be something that is more at the time or the moment. What does it take? There's a lot of things that go into different types of mindset. When you deal with mindset, you're dealing with a whole nother thing. It's not the physical skills that do it. I mean, the training, the physical training and all that stuff, it's all necessary. But it's the mindset that makes the difference. And when you're not training a certain mindset, you're going to lose the competitive or the combat. I mean, you're going to have to choose one. And some people say, I can choose both. You really can't choose both and train it in one session. It has to have a session for this and a session for this. Okay? Can you teach people MMA? These are examples. I just use MMA because it's a very popular sport within the martial arts world. Can I teach MMA within my jiu-jitsu class and teach jiu-jitsu self-defense with a combat mindset? Yes, but this is going to be a separate class. The jiu-jitsu competition is going to have to be a separate class. And then the actual self-defense with the different mindset for all that has to be a separate class. So all of that has to have a different classes altogether because everything's different. The differences between like a jiu-jitsu competition compared to an MMA competition, different mindset. You can't smash someone's face. You can't ground and pound on this person in a jiu-jitsu competition. You need to work on more technical skill for your jiu-jitsu competition than you possibly have to do for your MMA. Why? Because you do have the option to just sit there and smash someone in their head. Now, but the jiu-jitsu, say your self-defense side of this, how can I take these skills, put them on this person, and then apply a combat mind, which means I'm going to do some very, very bad, violent, bodily harm upon this person. Not in the ways of punches, but vital striking, vital hits, and something that's going to cause an injury as soon as possible. Some of these competitions, people want to argue back and forth about it. But it's like, well, you are trying to create injury, but you know that you can't just break the guy's knee first step. You can't punch him in the throat your first strike. You can't punch him in the throat at all. You can't break their knee at all. Broken arms and separated shoulders are consequences of not tapping out in competitions, certain competitions. Getting knocked out is not the worst thing that can happen to you. Okay? Getting knocked out in the street, you fall over, hit your head on concrete, you die because of a brain trauma. You try to punch someone in the face, you hit him, he takes the punch, turns around, stabs you 14 times in the throat. These are consequences of not having the mindsets and the awareness of what is necessary to have, so that's the whole thing. And it's not that one is better than the other, it's the other ones need to complement the other. There is no better, there is just building up and fixing the things that you don't do well. More likely the combat guys, they probably don't do competitions well at all. They couldn't teach kids how to do some sort of competition stuff, but I can guarantee in the street they're going to do really well. So there's that issue. Where do we put on the brakes? Where do we hit the accelerator when it comes to our mindset, and what do we have to do? Basically, which one do we want to stop, and when do we want to hit the gas on the other one? These are not easy things to do. And sometimes when you get in that combative mindset, and you've had combat situations, not restraining situations, combat situations where you had to kill another person, or your life was on the line, so someone had to die. Taking that mindset and turning it into a competitive mindset is really, really difficult, because their instincts are no longer your typical instinct. And with people like Paul, who are always going right for their weapon, their hand-to-hand stuff, their hand stuff is to get into, to grab the weapon, get a hold of a weapon. In that instance, that person's going to probably more likely prevail against you in the street, because that person who trains that way, he's already carrying. He's already trained and adapts, know how to get to his weapon as soon as possible. And he's probably carrying more than one. I can guarantee that person's going to prevail over someone who just said, well, I'm going to just throw fists. Or he does carry a pocket knife, but he doesn't go to his pocket knife because of the fact that he's had more training in a competitive idea, okay? But that's my idea of that. Watch the video. You'll see more of what I'm talking about. And just watch it, because Paul's really good. And Dominic gets some good questions, and they go over some stuff. So it's really good. I really suggest people to watch it. The next topic I want to talk about is my friend Mike Morales from Fit to Fight is put this video up of a group. It was like a team MMA thing. It must be a foreign, because I think they're both overseas. If you're in the U.S., they were overseas. If you're from there, it was from your hometown. But you'll see the video. These guys, though, they came out in a team, and they were just duking it out, man. Well, one team, this team in black, tried to start doing takedowns and things like this, like you would see in MMA. And as soon as they did, these guys, it was a team effort, because they were all in one spot all at the same time. One guy would be leveling this one guy. Well, as soon as that guy was unconscious, or he beat that guy to the point where he wanted to stop, he bolted over and he would start beating and stomping and kicking this other guy that was on the ground with his guy. And the one guy was doing, there was one, I think he was doing really well on the ground with his opponent. Then the guys came over and started beating the crap out of him. And he went away. I mean, he had to get picked up and dragged out. He was weary. So it's like, and then the whole thing was, is the reality behind that is it's a great show of grappling for a street situation, which that would be more like a street situation than anything else, really. Oddly enough, in the weird competitive thing, but that's about as close as you're going to get to a very controlled street fight. And the ground guys did not do well. They all lost. And it was because they went to the ground, and basically, even though they had the other person, it was taking them time to get the move that they needed. And then that time was precious, because that guy had friends, and those friends beat on you. And when you were on the ground, it was already too late. You could only grapple with one person, okay? Unless you have multiple arms, and multiple legs, you can only grapple one person at a time. And that situation was the worst situation you can be in. And that's the argument, though. That's the argument we've all had. That's the argument that we always talk about. That yes, if you fall, you're going to be some jiu-jitsu guys kind of make fun of it, and they talk about it, but at the same time, it's like, you guys. Some of these guys, though, I think they're poking fun because they've never thought of it in that capacity, because they've never been in a gigantic street fight where there was more than one person. Or they were never in a fight where there was a big crowd of people, and then out of nowhere someone comes over and boots them in the head, or grabs their head, smashes it into something, or he just merely picked up and he was choked out instead. It happens. And it happens a lot in street fights. So for anyone to really say that, that it's the best thing to get, I just prefer knowing grappling just to know how to get up off the floor. I want to know how to grapple, because if someone puts me in something that could snap my arm, I want to be able to counter it. If they, in these types of situations, I don't care about the competition aspect because honestly, you know, much like Paul, if you go right for a weapon after them, I mean, someone tries to armbar Paul, or he's in a situation where he can get to his knife, and he's going for it. He goes right to his knife. He's training. His training goes from this is how I maneuver into this position to get my weapon. Now this guy's grappling empty-handed with a guy with a knife. Not going to happen. As many people that are out there that are maybe good at being able to handle that, I can guarantee the vast majority of people would not be able to handle a person with a weapon on the ground. You basically grab that weapon and hold on for dear life. I used to do that all the time. People would start, we'd work from stand-up to, if they go into grappling, it was an MMA type style thing. But then, after so long, I would throw in a padded stick. Or I'd throw in a training knife. See what happens. As soon as something would land, they would run to that weapon. And that was the first thing they did. Now the person who ever got to that weapon was the one who clearly would win. If they didn't go for the weapon, this was what was funny. If one person did not go for the weapon, then one person went for a weapon and it was not near them, the person who did not have the weapon would prevail because that person now was distracted. And that person, now you hand them knives and stick them in their belts. You give them training knives, stick them in their belts, and they start wrestling around. Once you start losing that position, once you start losing you start losing ground, that's the first person that starts pulling a knife. Or the one that decides to pull the knife first because, hey, I don't want to be the first one dead. That's the person that has an offensive mindset of just, I'm kill or be killed. So it's like, you have these types of scenarios and no one really thinks about them. But this video really clearly shows that, being on the ground it's not a wonderful place, especially for a street situation or a multiple attacker situation. Please don't do this. I mean, that's my thing. That's what I see it as. Is grappling good? Yes. Is it necessary for some things? You bet. Is it an all in all, there's an encompassing thing? No, it's not. You need all of it, okay? And that is the real argument. And unfortunately, I think everybody's losing the fact that that's the argument. Is it's not an all encompassing one thing. And I don't want us to lose that perspective. That we're not saying that it's bad. We're just saying that it's not the all in all beat all. It's not the everything. That's all we're saying. So these are some good videos to watch, and I'm going to put them down below. I'm going to put the channels down below as well, just for Paul Ingram and Dominic Izzo. And I'm going to keep popping things out here every now and then just to let everybody know. But leave comments below, share this, get a hold of me on Facebook, get a hold of me on here, if whatever works. I mean, you can follow me on Twitter and at TFS Michael Reese. The link will be below. And so just keep doing this out and send me some questions, send me some things, and I'll see what I can come up with. Like it, share it, and get it out there. But let's continue to talk about martial arts and let's keep it truthful. Okay? Light.